Now, if you're wondering why I got rid of my mini split, well, I'll tell you. It's because so many of you guys reached out to me and said, Leah, you gotta show us how to install a dual zone mini split. And well, Tosot is gonna make that happen. I'm gonna show you step by step how it's done today. You're gonna be able to do it yourself, and guess what? You're gonna save a boatload of money. I want to thank Tosot for sponsoring today's video. Hi everybody, now in today's video, I'm going to be installing, and I'm going to show you step by step how to install a dual zone mini split. It's going to be a lot easier than you think. Last summer, I installed a mini split in my shop, but what I quickly realized was, well, that didn't do anything for the room above it, because there's an office suite above the workshop, and I want to air condition that as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to take out the old unit, which is only 18,000 BTUs, okay, and we're going to put in the new unit, which is going to take care of the shop and the studio above. Now, when you're dealing with an existing AC unit like this one here, well, you got to be mindful of the refrigerant that's inside. So you want to do the responsible thing, call an HVAC service tech so that they can recover the refrigerant before you disconnect the unit. Okay, this is our new mini split system. This is our condenser, and then up front are our evaporators. Once you receive your mini split, one of the most important things I have found through experience is you want to take the unit out of the box and you'll want to inspect it very closely, because you want to make certain it didn't get damaged in shipment. And once you've determined that everything is A-OK, then grab that owner's manual and you want to check the parts section against what you can visually see to make certain that you have everything that you're supposed to have before you move forward. Now we're ready to start installing our mini split, but before we get started, I want to tell you something really important. Here it is. If you have an HVAC specialist come out and install your unit, it's going to run you $9,000. But if you do it yourself, you save that money, and it's a big, huge savings. Now listen, I don't want you to feel intimidated because it's a dual zone system, because I'm going to walk you through it. But to do this job, I gotta tell you this, you're gonna need tools that you typically aren't going to have in your shop. So I'm going to walk you through the tools, and I'm going to make certain that I leave a link in the description below so that you can find these specialty tools that's going to help you install the unit. This right here is the evaporator. It's the indoor unit. It's what you see when you walk into a house and someone has a mini split. You see this unit attached to the wall. That's what this is. Okay, I'm ready to install the indoor unit. I've left the packaging on because we have to lay it on its front so we can access the back panel. The reason why we have to roll it over to have access to the back is because this right here, this is the mounting bracket, and we remove this. The other thing that we need access to is these lines here go to the outside of the unit to the condenser, and this here, this is our drainage line. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to first remove the mounting plate, because we're going to have to attach this to the wall because it acts like a cleat, and it's going to allow us to rest our evaporator right on this mounting plate. To remove the mounting bracket or plate, there's just one screw. It's right there in the center, and we're going to just remove this screw right here. The bracket will just lift out of the back, and now we're ready to install it. I'm attaching my unit to a wooden wall, but if you have drywall, you're going to want to use a stud finder to locate the studs so that when you screw the mounting plate in, you're attaching to something solid. What I'll do is I'm going to take a level here and I'm going to place it on top, and then I'll level it up. Once it's leveled, like it is right now, that's level. Now it's time for me to drive my screw. Now once you hit the stud, feel free to drive additional screws in. Okay, so I've turned it back on its back, open the front of the unit, because what we have to do is we have to attach the signal wire, and we do that from inside. And I want you to follow my hand, okay? we're gonna slide over here to our right. See this little screw here? I'm gonna take this out. It's just a cover plate, folks. That's all that is. We're gonna remove this one screw. And what it's gonna reveal is something called a terminal block. This right here, that's what we attach our signal wire to. Now, I also want to draw something else to your attention, and it's this right here. Now, I want you to check this out. This makes this unit Wi-Fi ready. And I think that's pretty cool because you'll be able to use your cell phone or your smartphone, well, to turn the unit on and off. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our signal cable here, we're going to fish it through the back to the front. We're in the front now. This right here, that's a strain relief. But we're going to need to remove that to give ourselves a little wiggle room. Now, a strain relief, it holds wires securely so they don't pull out. Now we'll reinstall that once we fish our wire through. Now with the strain relief removed, it'll make it easy for us to fish it to the back to the front and then make our connections. If you notice, we've got our U-type lugs here. That's what these are called, and we're going to attach to the appropriate terminals. Okay, we've come around to the back side of the unit. I want to show you exactly where you need to fish that signal cable through. You want to go to the top of the unit where my hand is. I'm going to take a screwdriver and I'm going to point directly to the route you want to take. We're going to take our cable and we're going to fish it right through here. So here we go. I'm going to fish my signal cable through. And I'm going to help tug it through with the ground wire, and there we go. Okay, I'm going to rest this on its back so we can make our connections. Don't be intimidated by the wiring because they provide a diagram for you to follow, and you just have to match the colored wires to the correct labels on the terminal block. It's easy peasy. Now once you've attached all your wires, replace the cover and screw it down firmly. It's time to move on to our refrigerant lines. All right, we've got our signal wire attached, but now we've got to attach our copper line, and we're going to be attaching right here. Now check this out. They give you 16 feet of copper line, and you've got to unravel it carefully because you don't want to kink it up. So it really helps you to have a helper unravel the copper line to make certain that you don't kink it up. Now if you follow my hand here, we come across the refrigerant lines. That's what these are. I'm going to take an open-ended wrench like this. I'm going to place it right on this nut because what I have to do is I have to remove these plastic caps. I'm able to twist that off by hand. Now if you hear a little air, don't worry about it. That's absolutely normal. So there we go. This one I can just remove by hand. It just screws off very easily. There we go. Okay, it's time for us to join our lines together. We've got the lines that are attached to the evaporator, and then we have the lines that we're going to fish through the wall to the outside. Now we have to join the two together, and to do that, we have to remove the caps. Just use a flathead screwdriver to wedge those things off. Now we're going to use a little nylon blue for our connections, compatible with all refrigerants, and it's not going to contaminate the system. So let me do that. Now you don't apply it to the threads. We're just going to apply it to the face here. Now let's join the two together. Large line to large line, small line to small line. So let's start with our small line first. I've made my connections here finger tight, but now we've got to torque it, right? To do that, I'm going to take an wrench and I'm going to set that on the stationary nut. Now I'm going to take my torque wrench. Let me show you how to set it. You're looking now at the handle of the torque wrench, and this is where we make our setting adjustments. Now at the top here of the handle, you may notice an NM, and that stands for Newton meters. What we're going to do is we're going to set our torque wrench to 15 to 20 Newton meters. I'm going to select 15. Now to make the adjustment, you have this little sleeve that slides up and slides down. When you slide it up like that, it locks the handle, okay? When you slide it down, it allows you to turn it clockwise or counterclockwise, depending on the Newton meter. Now, once you've got it on the 15 mark, you lock that in place. And it might turn a little bit, but it's not going to turn enough where it makes a difference. Our torque wrench is currently set at 15 Newton meters, but here's the thing. What if you need to make an odd adjustment? And I'll explain that, because there's two sets of numbers on a torque wrench. On the shaft, there are numbers that increase by 5. So 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. So in our case, it's 15 Newton meters and you easily set it. But if you need to set it to 17 or 16 or 13 or 11, that's not in increments of 5. So what this tool does is it allows you to make micro adjustments. So just by turning the handle, because right now it's set at 15, you'll see a 0 there. If you need to make a micro adjustment up or down, well, you just turn the handle slightly to make that adjustment. Now, the next thing you need to know about a torque wrench is this. You're listening for a click, because that's going to let you know once you've tightened that fitting to the proper torque. You'll hear one click, you'll let up on it a little bit, press down on it, and you'll hear a second click. Then you'll know that you reached the proper torque setting. Now it's time for us to drill our hole through the wall so we can feed the cable from the inside to the outside. Now to do that, we need a bit long enough to drill not only through the interior wall, but all the way through the exterior wall. I'm going to use a paddle bit. Then I'm going to follow up with a hole saw that's going to create an opening large enough to feed the cable through. Now keep in mind, when you're drilling with that hole saw, tip that drill downwards as you drill from the inside out. And then when you're drilling from the outside in, you got to tip the drill upwards. That's going to allow water to drain freely through the drain hose. Now there are two times when I want to really encourage you to get a little help, all right? One is when you got to unravel that 16-foot line, and the other time is when you need to lift the evaporator up onto the bracket. Now, if you find your copper line set is too long once you pull it through the wall, maybe you have a lot of excess left over and you want to hook it up to the condenser. Well, here's the thing. You can cut the copper lines, but you need to flare the end. And this is what a flared end looks like, and this is how you use the flaring tool. Now, once you have your copper line cut, you'll want to take the nut and you'll want to place it on that copper line before you flare it. Because if you flare it before you put the nut on, you'll never get the nut past the flare. Now it's time for us to flare the end of our copper line, and we're going to use the flaring tool. Now what we have here is the tool comes with a guide, and it's got corresponding diameter of tubing. Now we need 1/4 inch. So we're just going to insert it there. You want it to be, for the most part, pretty level with the tool itself. Now, it's got a little indentation here, if you can see it, and that's going to help flare the end of it. Now we're going to take this and we're going to insert it in our tool. Now we've slid our guide down into the corresponding slot on the side. Now it's time to just tighten it so it doesn't move. Now all I have to do is pull the trigger and it will flare the end. This is what a 1/4 inch flared copper line looks like. Now that we've got our lines coming out of the wall, we've got our coolant lines, condensation line, and we have our signal cable. We've got to bundle the 4 together and wrap it with tape that they provide. Now what I want to say is this. With the last install, I wrapped my cable first and then fed it through the opening to the outside. But what I found was it was a little difficult to maneuver that cable through the hole. It was a lot easier the second time when I didn't wrap the cable and I waited to wrap the cable once it had exited the building. Now, this is our condensation line, and at some point you have to determine where you want the condensation line to exit out of the bundle. You don't want to keep this condensation line in the bundle because this bundle is going to your condenser. You want this to be able to drain. All right, I've got my coolant lines here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to feed them upstairs to the second floor unit. I've got somebody up there on the other end. This is what they call sealing gum. I'm going to open it up so you can take a look at it. And you know, it's a lot like plumber's putty. It's soft, and it's going to help us seal the voids where the cables are coming out of the wall. So we're going to stick some of this sealing gum in there. And then what we'll do is we'll take this scutcheon here. Now, this is improved from the last mini split I installed. The scutcheon was just one solid piece, but this is split. It's going to make it a lot easier for us to, you know, secure it to the wall and get it around the cables that are coming out. When selecting a site for the compressor, you want to make certain that it has a lot of airflow surrounding it. I'm attaching my compressor to a concrete slab, and I'm using concrete screws. Now, you can use a sleeve anchors if you'd like. I've selected the concrete screws because I find that they're easiest to install. I like to use a hammer drill to drill the holes for the concrete screws because I find that it makes quick work of it. Now it's time to connect the refrigerant pipe and the signal wire to the outdoor unit. So let's take off the cover plate. Now what we need to do is we need to fish wire up through this cover plate. Now, one hole is already knocked out for something called the whip, and I'll show you what that looks like. It doesn't have a strain relief here because the whip already has one. Over here, we're going to have to create another knockout and install a strain relief over here on this knockout because you've got to remember, we'll have two signal wires because there's two evaporators. One evaporator, which is the inside unit, is for the first floor, and then the second evaporator is going to be installed on the second floor. Now this right here is our quick disconnect, and our whip is attached to it. Remember I talked about a whip and I want you to know what it looks like? Well, the whip ultimately is powered by our breaker panel. That's what brings power to our condenser. And I'm going to fish the wire through the opening here, like so. Then I'm going to get that strain relief nut. There we go. You know, now we're ready to hook up our signal wire to our outside unit, which is our condenser. There are 4 terminal blocks here at the top and 1 terminal block here. Why do we have 4? Well, this particular condenser, well, it'll supply 4 evaporators. Now we're only going to do a dual system, so we only need 2 terminal blocks. And this terminal block down here, that's for the whip. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to match the wire color with the labels on the terminal block. Now just follow this diagram here. I'm going to attach our wires and then I'm going to show you how I did it. When you're ready to attach the coolant lines, I want you to notice that they're different sizes, and so are the valves. So I'm going to attach the bottom one first, which is the 1/4 inch line. Once I've got that nut tight, I'm going to put my torque wrench on it, and I'm going to torque it to the proper specifications. Now remember, we're listening for the 2 clicks. There's one. And there's a second one. Now this is important. I want to show you what you're looking at here. You got to keep in mind that this condenser, it has the ability to supply 4 evaporators. Now our system, well, it's just going to be a dual system, so we're only going to need to use 2 for our coolant. Now I've already installed the first two lines for our coolant, and that's going to serve the downstairs. Now the second floor, we're going to hook up to here, and that's going to supply coolant to our second floor evaporator. Okay, we're in the home stretch. I've installed the inside and the outside unit. Now it's time for us to do something called evacuate the lines. And what that means is there's air that builds up in the line and sometimes debris, and you got to pull that out of there before you circulate the refrigerant. And this gauge and this pump allow you to do it. Now the next thing you need that doesn't come with the unit is this part right here. What it is a charging vacuum port adapter. It's going to help you with the process of evacuating the lines. What I'll do is I'll place a link in the description below to this part as well. We've got two sets of lines here, one for the downstairs unit and one for the upstairs unit. We're going to start with the downstairs unit and take off this cap, and this cap, and then we'll repeat the process with the upstairs unit. The caps just twist right off. There we go. Now I've got all three caps removed. I'm going to repeat the process with the upstairs unit. Now to begin the evacuation process, you want to connect the charging hose of the manifold gauge to the refrigerant charging vent of the gas valve. You want to make certain that the high pressure here is closed, all right? Turn on the low pressure valve like that. So I'm opening it up, it's on. And now, well, we've got to go down here to our vacuum pump and hit the switch and turn it on. Now this is what you're looking for. You want to make certain that the gauge remains at -0.1. You don't want it to fluctuate. You don't want it to go high or low. You just want it to remain steady. You want to make certain that you run the vacuum pump for 10 to 15 minutes. I ran it for 15 minutes just to make certain. Now it's time to turn the vacuum pump off, but before we do that, we have to close the low pressure valve. Now I'm going to turn off the pump. Now you need to wait 5 minutes because you want to make certain that there's no change in the pressure. Now, if there's no change in pressure, we're finished with evacuating the lines. But before we remove the manifold gauge and the pump, you want to take an Allen wrench like this, and you want to insert it right into the valve here, because what we're going to do is we're going to create some positive pressure in the line. And what you want to do is you just want to turn it quarter turn just for a few seconds. Just like that, and turn it off. You want to make certain that the gauge just spikes a little bit, and then, like I said, turn it off. All right, now it's time for us to take off our adapter. Now I'm putting on gloves because there may be just a little bit of refrigerant in the line. Go ahead and remove the manifold gauge. And then we just repeat the process on the upstairs valves. Now our manifold gauge, our vacuum pump, and our adapter are off. So we have to charge the unit now. And the way we do that is, well, you got to remember that our condenser here, it's full of refrigerant. But we've got to send that refrigerant down our lines to our evaporator. The way we do that is we take this Allen wrench, we insert it in this valve here, all right? And you want to turn counterclockwise. That's going to allow the refrigerant to go to our evaporator. Okay, open up the valve on the bottom. Replace the caps. Now it's always a good idea, even though you may not hear air escaping, but to check for leaks anyway, and you do that with a little soapy water. Just, you know, squirt a little soapy water. If you see bubbles, then you know, well, you've got a leak. If you don't see any bubbles, you know you're good to go. Now for the moment of truth. Let's turn it on. See what happens. There we go. Now that's ice cold. This is Leah saying, you can do this. See you next time.